Welcome back to Not Another Mummy podcast with me, Alison Perry. This is a special replay of an interview that I did with Deborah James back in January 2018. It was just over a year after she'd been diagnosed with stage 4 bowel cancer, and we sat in her living room drinking tea and talking all about her experience over the previous 12 months. Now, 4.5 years later, Deborah, who is mum to 2 children, has raised an incredible amount of awareness of bowel cancer through writing for The Sun, publishing a book, appearing on national TV, all the while sharing her highs and lows with us all. A week ago, Deborah announced that following a particularly tough 6 months where she's mostly been in hospital, she is now receiving hospice at home care. She set up the Bowel Babe Fund, which incredibly raised over £6 million in under a week. All of this was recognised when she was awarded a Damehood by Prince William. You can donate to the Bowel Babe Fund, and I really urge that you do if you can. The link is in the episode notes. We don't know how much time is left for Deborah, but in her words, the fund will help other Deborahs who have cancer. So, here is my chat with Deb from 4 years ago. Welcome, Deborah, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I feel like we should explain to the listener that this is the 3rd attempt at recording this.
I was going to say 3rd time lucky, I think.
Yes.
Well, we're hoping this will be 3rd time lucky.
Yeah, so the first time I came round to your house and I got a call from my daughter's school to say, she's not well, come and pick her up. And then the second time, which was last week, it all went swimmingly well. And we had a lovely time chatting and recording the podcast. Except when I went to edit it, I discovered that the sound quality was terrible.
Yeah. So we're back here again. And
I think that it's really good to have a warm up like that. I mean, that just means that this chat is going to be great.
Really straightforward. It'll be
you
fine.
Agree?
I've already thought about some of the end questions. I already know.
Oh yes, damn it! You know what my quickfire questions are going to be.
Quickfire questions are going to be.
Oh, why didn't I think about that and change them? Oh, call myself a professional. So you are a mum to a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old, aren't you? And you're a former deputy head teacher. And is it just over a year ago? Have I got that right?
Just over a year ago.
You discovered that you've got stage 4 bowel cancer.
Yeah.
And you describe yourself as living with cancer rather than being a cancer victim or a sufferer. Tell me a little bit about why you have that attitude towards what you're going through.
So I think the word cancer conjures up so many negative connotations, regardless of what stage that cancer might be. And I think somebody only has to say to you, you have cancer, and you suddenly think, I'm going to die, I'm going to die tomorrow, my kids are going to be sad without me, and it has all these kind of pictures that come up. And actually what you realise is, yes, I have stage 4 cancer, which means that I have cancer that is throughout my body, and it's metasized, which essentially means that it's gone to some of my organs.
So that's what stage 4 means. Just for anyone listening who isn't clear, stage 4 means that it has spread.
Yeah, so in most cancers, it's always the same. So stage 4 means that it's spread from the initial site. So my initial tumour was in my bowel. And up to stage 3, so you've got 1, 2 and 3, and depending on the kind of cancer it is, breast cancer, brain tumour, God forbid, whatever it might be, how far that cancer has grown and spread throughout your lymphatic system will depend on the stage that the cancer is. Now, there is no stage 5, put it this way. One of the outcomes for stage 4 are worse. The reason is because cancer has become part of your system, and it means it's travelled through your body from one site to another site. So in my case, it travelled through my bowel and went to my lungs, which sounds a bit of a weird connection, but that's quite a common path for bowel cancer. And essentially it means it's gone into my organs, so it now becomes a bit of a challenge in terms of how you maintain it or control it.
But you very much see it as being that you're living with cancer and that you refuse to be seen as a victim. Is that fair?
I think that's really fair. I think you can have good days with cancer, and I think I try to demonstrate that very much. I'm not going to lie to you, cancer is horrible. it makes your whole world flip 180. But at the same time, I have done things that I never thought possible. And I think it's really important to, and I've met loads of amazing people, whether it's through Instagram or through charity communities, who are living with a diagnosis that says they are unfortunately dying. Now, I don't talk about dying. I don't know what's around the corner. But to be honest, none of us do. I'm in a situation where I'm hopeful that there will be a magic drug around the corner. So with my oncologist, we talk about the next step. What happens next? We don't talk about what might happen in the future.
So is that a very conscious thing for you? Are you very much focused on the next step rather than looking too far into the future?
I think what happened with me is when I was first diagnosed, I unfortunately I went very quickly to stage 4. I found out very quickly that it had spread. And you look up statistics, and the statistics for bowel cancer are hideous. For most cancers at stage 4, they're hideous. So less than 1 in 10 people will survive for 5 years with what I have.
Wow.
So if I were to focus on those statistics, everything will tell you that I am going to die, essentially. And then within those statistics, I unfortunately have a mutation that's really aggressive. And I spent weeks, months in a really, really dark place looking up all these studies, and everyone fell off the bottom of the study. So essentially I couldn't find any good studies that told me I was going to live. So at some point I had to just draw a line under it, because where's it going to get me?
You can drive yourself mad with that kind of thing, can't you?
You can go mad. And you have to therefore focus on the fact that, for me, I'm under a great team at the Marsden, and you kind of have to focus on what happens next, what we're going to do next, because I think, I could be one of those lucky ones. I have...
You could be that study.
I could be that study.
That people in the future are going, oh, well, look at Deborah.
Look at that. And there are, I think, a lot of research is based on stuff in the past. It takes years to come to fruition, and, techniques and things and the way that I'm being treated now, we don't know what the results or the outcomes for those things are.
Sure.
So you have to remain positive. I think if you don't have hope, then you may as well give up.
What do you have?
What do you have, exactly?
So let's go right back to the beginning. And is it true that you thought you had irritable bowel syndrome to begin with?
For years. I think all of us do sometimes a little bit. When you've got a bit of a dodgy stomach.
And also I think, we all live in such a stressful day-to-day life that quite often you get a bit of IBS, and that's a very normal thing,
and you
isn't
just
it?
think it's IBS. And I was a busy working mum of 2, and I think, what life is like when you just run around and you justify everything that's going on in your body to just being a busy mum of 2.
Yeah.
So I was really tired. Oh, well, I've got 2 kids.
We're all tired.
Right, all the time. I started losing a bit of weight. But actually, for me, that I just justified that I'd started working out a bit more.
So you had started working out and lost weight?
Yeah.
So that's a fair assumption to make.
So that's a fair assumption. I was thinking, well, that's pretty good. And the key thing for me was my bowel habits changed and I started passing blood. But when you look up at my age, passing blood, you are often given a diagnosis of hemorrhoids, which we've all probably had hemorrhoids, or from those birthdays,
pregnancy, yeah.
And you're that's what you're often given, is that diagnosis. The worst case scenario, I went to a doctor's and they thought it could be something called Crohn's or colitis. Yeah. And it was only then that I suddenly thought, oh, maybe it's getting a bit serious. But the key thing is that all my blood tests came back normal. And it was only when I then started really worrying, and some of my friends, I actually started taking pictures of my poo. And the reason I did that is because I think everybody's view of passing blood is different.
Yeah.
So, for example, one person, I know I'm getting really graphic here.
I think getting graphic is good, and I think talking about this openly is only a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. So, one person, for example, might have a drop of blood fresh blood when they wipe their bottom. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not a medic and I'm not going to give out advice, but on the whole, that would be deemed as probably a tear or a cut or a bit of a hemorrhoid.
Yeah.
The key thing for me was that my blood was mixed in with my stools, but it still looked really fresh. And so there was a bit of confusion because I was thinking, oh, well, maybe it's a really bad hemorrhoid.
Yeah.
And the key thing was somebody should have probably asked me how much blood I was losing.
Right.
And it was only when I started taking pictures and photographs and showing them did, was my fears confirmed that actually I was losing quite a lot of blood.
So did you show those photographs to your doctor?
Yeah,
who then kind of was like, oh, hang on a minute.
Yeah, because I think it's all good and well, isn't it, when you walk up to the GP and you say, I'm losing a bit of, I'm passing a bit of blood.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what does it actually look like?
Yeah.
And it's really hard to describe, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
So it was that actually that got me a referral in the end. And then I saw a consultant who immediately did a colonoscopy. A colonoscopy is basically where you put a camera up your bottom. Right. As you do, and everything fell silent. I had a 6.5 centimetre tumour up my bum.
Wow.
And they knew there and then that it was cancerous.
They knew there and then?
In his professional opinion, nothing was confirmed until I had biopsies.
What was that like, being told that?
It was awful. I mean, I have nightmares about it
Still?
to this day. Yeah, I do actually, because nobody will ever forget the day that they're told they might have cancer. And it's really scary. You know exactly the way you felt, how everyone responded to you. I'll never forget people's faces looking at me. And I remember because one of the assistants in the room kind of knew what had been found, and they were trying to distract me from the kind of, when everything gets very serious and silent. And I am a hypochondriac massively when it comes to medical things. So I had already researched what a normal bowel would look like. So I knew that actually my bowel didn't look right, and I knew it was bleeding, and I knew that they were getting quite serious in the room because they started taking loads of biopsies, and I just knew something was wrong. Yeah. And when the consultant came round to tell me the news, he said, I know that you already know that we found something. Yeah. And he didn't, he didn't, screw around with it. He just went straight to the chase. He said, we found a tumour. He said, in my professional opinion, I think it's cancerous. We've taken some biopsies. We need to get you immediately into surgery, and we need to scan you. And then my life just kind of fell off a cliff.
Oh my God, I can't even imagine. I mean, what words did you say back to the consultant as he was saying this to you? I
screamed to him. I said, I don't want to die. That's all I said. I just said, I don't want to die. And he said, look, you may just need it cut out, and then that's it. You can go on your merry way. But he said, we need to find out what's going on. He didn't give me false hope. But I didn't even... Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it was hell. We went, me and my husband was with me at the time. We then got in the car, drove, went and got the most expensive bottle of wine that we could find. And you go into this surreal world where you're not really living it. You're kind of in a weird existence.
Well, I guess it must have felt almost like a bad dream.
Yeah, it felt like it was. You kind of go to sleep and you wake up thinking, "Oh, come on, it will just go away. It's not that bad." And then the motions start. You start going through the motions, and you start having to go to tests, and you start realizing that this is your life.
So did you tell your kids straight away?
No, we didn't. That was really difficult actually, because we came back in. And just pretended everything was fine because we didn't know what we were dealing with.
That's such a typical parent thing to do, isn't it? I mean, understandably, but just swallowing your worst fears.
Yeah, you just swallow it.
And putting on a brave face for your kids.
Yeah, and they're like, how are you? They knew I'd had an appointment. How's your bum? Oh, it's fine, don't worry. And then one positive is that my son actually had a little colonoscopy operation when he was younger, and they removed a little thing from him. So we were able, when we had established that I needed to have an operation, we were able to tell them that actually Mummy was going to have the same operation.
Right.
As my son.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, well, that's easy. And so he starts going, oh, Mummy, it's like such an easy operation.
I've done it.
I've done this. You'll be fine. And I think for us, we were lucky in that way. And it was only after the operation that we knew 100%, although we were always told it could be cancer, it could be cancer. It was only after the operation that we knew 100% that it was. And then I will never forget having to tell them that day.
What was that like?
That was awful. So we went out to a restaurant actually, and I kind of said, look, so Mummy had the tumour cut out of her. Unfortunately, it's got cancer inside of it, but the doctor's going to do everything to get rid of the cancer and make sure that it's not in the rest of Mummy's body. But I just broke down. I mean, you can't. I couldn't hold myself together, to be honest. I don't know how people can, and then I've just been very open about it. So everything I write, my blogs and my columns, everything on Instagram, I let the children see if they want to. I don't shove it in their face, but I don't stop them from reading anything that I write.
That's amazing. So back when you first told them, did they understand, do you think? Like, had they heard of cancer? Did they know? I
think because my kids are 10 and 8, or, they were a little bit younger then. But even in Disney movies, the mum dies of cancer.
Yeah, that's so true. People get cancer, they die.
They die. And it's kind of like, I was watching something with my daughter the other day, and it's all like teeny bopper, like la la la. Oh yeah, well her mummy had cancer and her father's got cancer right now and she's lost her hair. And I'm like, oh my word, like, so even, in the most
tame
upbeat,
kids.
Yeah. And they know what the connotations of the word cancer is, and the thing that really grates on me, and I know I'm going slightly off topic, but you're sitting there at 8 o'clock on a before Christmas on Saturday evening watching the X Factor, my family we do anyway, and suddenly in the adverts comes on kind of a big deep dark depressive grey advert talking about how awful cancer is, and I'm sitting there with my children having cancer.
Yeah.
And that kind of image of cancer really, really gets to me.
I mean, on the flip side, you can understand why. I'm guessing it must have been a cancer charity
it's
advert.
It's a charity, and I know that it makes us donate.
Yeah,
and that's why
they do it. It's to pull at the heartstrings.
And it does. It absolutely pulls at the heartstrings. And I get that. I get if you're on the other side of the fence, you see that advert, and unfortunately, that is a real portrayal of cancer. But when you're sitting there undertaking cancer and going through cancer yourself, you don't want your kids to see that side.
Especially when you are trying to be upbeat and positive.
Yeah.
And look on the bright side of things.
And you want to look on the bright side, and then you've just been diagnosed and all you see is this greyness being portrayed. And I think that goes back to your first question about living with cancer. So for me, I'm not hiding away from that image, that it is grey and depressing, but I also think that 1 in 2 of us are going to get it.
Is that true? 1 in 2 of us will get cancer?
As of today, 1 in 2 of us will get cancer, according to cancer research statistics.
That is terrifying.
It's terrifying. But what we've got to understand from those statistics is that more of us will live for 10 years after our diagnosis with cancer than will die from it.
Right.
So keeping in mind that the average age for a cancer diagnosis is much later on, and I don't want to kind of be quoted here, but it's normally in the 70s. Actually, our life expectancy wouldn't necessarily be kind of affected by our cancer diagnosis with modern kind of monitoring and techniques.
Sure.
However, there are unfortunately, 1 in 8 women will get breast cancer. 1 in 16 men will get bowel cancer, and 1 in 18 women will get bowel cancer.
So bowel cancer is more common in men?
Bowel cancer is more common in men, but it's the 3rd most common cancer kind of around. Although actually, not funny enough, but I think just last week prostate cancer overtook bowel cancer.
Funnily enough.
All the poo stuff. And you're thinking,
do you think it's? I mean, you're coming across as being like this real expert in cancer. Is that weird to you that you've developed all of this knowledge and you're just like churning out stats and facts?
I think it's one of those things that I'm a bit of a research geek. So when I was a deputy head, I was massively into educational research. So I read so much, and suddenly I had all this time on my hands because I couldn't continue with my previous role because it wouldn't have been fair on the kids, and suddenly I transferred all my research knowledge into just researching about. You become an expert in your own disease, to the point that I actually go now to some first-year medical students and talk about my case study.
Oh, wow.
And realise that I know more than they probably know because it's my life. I have to live it, and my way of dealing with it and having some control in the situation is to research the hell out of it. So I'm somebody who wants to know everything. I want to know what the best treatment options are. I want to know kind of, am I getting the right drugs? What has research shown? That doesn't work for everybody. And I wouldn't necessarily advocate it unless you love reading loads of kind of stuff. And it is quite dangerous because you can go down very dodgy pathways. But I do kind of like having a secure knowledge. And I also think it's really useful because I'm asked loads through social media, what were your symptoms? What are the symptoms? What does that mean?
Yeah.
And actually, I do think that I have a bit of a responsibility to at least educate other people or at least raise awareness with a platform that I have to do that.
Yeah.
So
you said, you said to me before, possibly might have been on the last podcast, that despite you being a bit of a geek and reading up and wanting to know stuff, you haven't actually ever asked your consultant what your life expectancy is.
Yeah, I don't want to know the answer because I think I remember us talking about this in that. So if he said to me, well, on average, somebody with your kind of cancer has 2 years to live, I would then sit and count down the days until the 2 years. So every event in my life, it will be, well, that's my last Christmas. Oh, well, that's my last birthday. And I'm not sure whether I could have the enjoyment in any of it. So I have chosen not to ask that question. I don't want to have that conversation unless I feel it's really necessary for life admin, if we want to say that, to have it. And as a result, I think by not asking that question, A, I have more hope, and B, it means I can just live for the small moments and celebrate the small milestones.
I think that's totally fair enough. I don't think many of us, if we could be told when we are going to die, because let's face it, we're all going to die at some point. I don't think many of us would want to know. No,
I think it's one of if somebody had said to me before I had cancer, what's your worst case scenario? It's kind of knowing that you're going to die. But there's some people that find great peace in that. And I hope that if I ever get to that point, I would find peace in it. But I'm not there yet. And I don't want to be there, and I don't even want to kind of have to consider it. Because, to be honest, it just makes me really sad. But I know that there are many mums maybe listening who are having to have those conversations. I mean, I know that as a fact because I've spoken to some of them. And that just, having to go through that just breaks my heart, the idea that I might have to tell my children, Mummy is going to die. I think I can't comprehend that at the moment.
I think that's fair enough, Deborah. So you've done 21 rounds of chemo, haven't you?
Yeah.
You've just finished.
I've just finished. So I had tomorrow is actually I started chemo a year ago tomorrow. Wow. Which is it's Valentine's Day, which is crazy. So my Valentine's Day last year was spent with some lovely doctors and nurses. Not in a nice romantic way, but essentially being pumped full of drugs. And I only realised that, I was writing my column this week, and I only realised that when I was looking back and thinking, wow, I've had quite a hardcore year. So I started that chemo with the plan that I was going to have chemo for 6 months. I was going to have 12 cycles, and a cycle is essentially, for me, every 2 weeks. So essentially I have drugs every 2 weeks. And the plan in my mind was 6 months of chemo, wham bam, move on with my life, it will all be done. And unfortunately, really quickly it transpired that the plan turned into kind of not a definitive plan, it just turned into let's just go to the next step. And what's just happened is I've actually just made it through to 21 cycles, which is kind of a year worth of chemo, minus the odd lung resection here and there. And I've actually made it through to the end of a regime. I just found that out on Friday. I was just saying to you earlier that I suddenly realised I was at the point that I was aiming towards. And I suddenly thought, I'm in that moment.
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm here. And I suddenly... I dream about, I see on Instagram and social media, these people who hold up banners and they're like, I'm out of chemo, I'm cancer-free. I dream about that, but I will never have that opportunity. And I think I wouldn't count my lucky stars to do it. So in theory, I finished my current chemo. I'm not even booked in for another bit of chemo.
Wow.
which is
what
amazing.
does that feel like?
It's really nice. I've just booked a holiday today, this morning. I've still got operations coming up. And I know the problem is the reason half of me wants to like literally shout from the roof and jump around for joy. And I think it's right that we celebrate those small milestones.
Definitely. And also having that gap between treatment, so between now and your operation or your first operation, getting away and getting a holiday
it's just amazing, which I haven't been able to. I've been grabbing these small opportunities, and you sometimes forget because I've been so hell-bent on this kind of the big celebration, but I forget that might not ever happen. So I suddenly thought, well, hang on a moment, you need to kind of celebrate these small things. But I know I'm really realistic, and I didn't want to do the whole, thank you to all the nurses, bye, see ya, I'm out of here, because the reality, and I know this, I feel really grounded by the people that I meet at the Marsden, because they're like, well, I had 6 weeks off of chemo and now I'm back on it, and it's, it's awful, and I hope that I'm not in that situation, but the reality with my type of cancer is that I probably will be back on chemo in 6 weeks, but you know what, if it's 6 weeks, I'll enjoy those 6 weeks. And I kind of, like we said earlier, it's one step at a time.
So does the chemo make you feel quite unwell?
Yeah, I think because I've had so much of it now. So for my kind of cancer, I've had full dose kind of nuclear chemo. And there's lots of different types of chemo you can have. You can have kind of maintenance chemo, which is slightly a lower dose. Lots of different drugs that cause loads of different side effects. And I haven't lost my hair, thank God, even though I was told, it's likely to thin. I was one of the lucky ones that haven't. But to be honest with you, I've now had so much kind of this full dose chemo that I am feeling the side effects beyond. I slept today. I've just been asleep all day. And tomorrow, hopefully, I'll have some energy to do something. But I am knackered, like beyond knackered.
So the plan is 2 operations.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of operations coming up where they're hoping to get out some lung tumours. And then it's a bit of a game of like, that splatting game, like... I can't think what it is, where you have to like hit the tumours on the head before they keep on popping up.
Yeah.
In the arcade.
Yes.
Splat the tumours. So I think with me it's a case of hoping to splat them before anything new pops up. I think that's the strategy. And you pray that they don't kind of have a kind of party in your body before you can do anything about it.
Yeah. So in the meantime though, you are doing a lot of work. You've got your column with The Sun, you've got a book that I know you can't talk about, but you are writing a book. I can
mention that I'm writing it.
You are writing it, and you do a lot of work to, with cancer charities. How important is that to you that you are? Because it all started with you writing your blog, didn't it?
Yeah, so I've always been somebody that runs at 100 miles an hour. So I was deputy head teacher in a secondary school, and my life was my work. I was always kind of, probably too much so actually. And I am somebody who will work at 3 o'clock in the morning through the night to get the job done. I'm just that person.
Yeah.
And one of the hard things for me actually was kind of a sense of loss over my job. I didn't lose my job, but I couldn't continue doing what I was doing. And for me, I therefore had a massive hole in my life that I'd never had to deal with before. I mean, even when I was on maternity leave, I was pretty much still kind of whacking some stuff out from home. And I, suddenly had this massive void, and I was like, well, what do I do? And I suddenly started writing mainly to kind of let people know how I was, because I was part of a teaching community and people are really lovely. It was like, how are you doing? And all these things. And so I started writing. And then from that, I realised that actually I've met loads of amazing people, and I started then writing for The Sun, which I think is an amazing platform to kind of just share my story. My story is, unfortunately, my story and what I say isn't unique. So I don't feel like I'm saying anything that other cancer patients don't experience. I think I just am really lucky that I have a platform to do it. But so therefore I really feel that there's a responsibility to speak on people's behalf. And then I'm somebody who kind of even despite having cancer, I have to throw myself into stuff. So before I knew it, I was kind of writing a book, which I'm doing at the moment, and getting myself involved with a variety of different projects. So I work really closely with 2 charities. So Bowel Cancer UK, I think, are incredible. I think their team are just absolutely passionate about stopping bowel cancer. And for them, we've raised kind of nearly £50,000 over the last year.
Wow.
That's because of all the amazing people who've kind of got behind and done runs. So I go under the name Bowel Babe, which we've talked about anyway. And so there's been loads of people who have fundraised on my behalf, not for me, the money doesn't go to me, but the money goes to Bowel Cancer UK. We did a ball last year.
Wow, did you?
Yeah, that was really good fun. Might even do another one coming up, you never know. So we've managed to raise about £50,000 in the last year, which
That's
I think is amazing.
It's totally amazing.
And
how do you balance all that off? I mean, you just finished saying that you're knackered and that you're really feeling the effects of the chemo. How do you balance looking after yourself and not overdoing it with all of this other stuff?
Yeah, not very well.
And being a mum.
So not very well, to be honest with you. I have loads of help. So I'll hold my hands up to the fact that I've got really supportive friends, family. I do have help here in the home as well, because I had it all in place when I was working anyway. So I've been lucky enough to kind of continue that. And I think for me, that's probably kept me sane, because it's meant that actually if I am totally flawed and I can't collect the kids from school, I'm in a really lucky position that I've got somebody that can collect the kids for me.
I guess it must create a bit of consistency for them as well.
Yeah. So nothing's changed for them. Everything has remained exactly the same, apart from the fact that they think mummy having cancer is quite a good thing, because suddenly mummy's around. So suddenly mummy collects them from school and they get to take the car rather than the bus. It's brilliant.
So do you think that in a weird way this is brought you closer to your kids?
Yeah, 100%. So our relationship has changed. So I was never a mumsy mum. Not that I don't really know what I mean by that. I was never good at staying at home. I wasn't interested in it, to be honest with you, and I found it really, really hard. I was somebody who surprisingly got pregnant at a very young age, and it's the best thing that happened. But I was kind of more concerned about what it might do to my career.
I think a lot of people listening will identify with that. I think that a lot of people don't admit to feeling that way.
Yeah,
where you love being a mum, but you also love your job, and
loved it.
You find it hard to, give up a large part of the job or how much you're working to be at home.
Absolutely. And I mean, there was part of me that was probably quite selfish with it, but I mean, I felt that that's how I functioned in a way. I kind of felt that I was more myself being at work than being at home.
Like I said, everyone's different, and there's no right or wrong way to be a mum.
Absolutely. And I take my hats off to people that are at home, because it's really hard work.
Really hard work.
It's really hard work. And don't get me wrong, it's also really hard work doing the other side.
Yeah.
But for me, I wanted to be able to sit on the toilet in the middle of the day and do a wee, albeit like running around school. Yeah. But I wanted to feel like me.
Yeah.
And I know that my temperament, I really struggled, really struggled, to be honest with you. So we orchestrated everything in our life, I suppose, so that I continued working through, for the last 10 years and carried on with my career.
Yeah.
And then suddenly I was forced to stop everything. And it was quite a weird eye-opener in terms of stuff that I've missed out on. I don't regret it, but I do have a realisation that I think my priorities were very, very skewed. And I would prioritise my job, and I would prioritise my own career over my kids.
So what kind of things have you experienced in the last year that in the past you've missed out on, do you think?
So I'd never gone to a sports day, I'd never gone to a school play, I was never on the school gate, just because I had no flexibility in my job to do so. I just didn't really know what was going on in my kids' lives. I mean, I know that sounds awful. I love my children, and I would be the mum, and I'm the mum over half term that overcompensates and then kind of like drags around.
Yeah, loads of exciting things.
Yes, we're going to do a year's worth of activities. That's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, I have the holidays with them, so I would always overcompensate in the holidays. But what I have missed out on is now, you know, I pick them up from school, not every day, or I drop them off, and every morning we have the conversations about, it's the basic conversations. It's kind of, what's happening in your play? Like, what part are you doing? Have you got your socks? Where's your mouth guard? What time do you need picking up? And I know they are very, very like normal conversations that everybody has, but I never had them.
Right. It's the tiny details, isn't it?
It's the tiny details. And I realise that my kids need me now more than ever for those tiny details.
Yeah.
And it's probably been the biggest shift in my life that, you know, cancer's given me this shift. I would say there's a lot of positives in it. Because I'm probably enjoying aspects of being a mum. I mean, don't get me wrong, I screamed at them like for half the day today. They were doing my head in.
I think it'd be a bit weird if you weren't doing that, Deborah.
Yeah, I was like,
I've turned into super mum.
I am super mum. No, I cannot handle it without a gin and tonic and a glass of wine. So I'm certainly not super mum. But I do think that I've found a bit more of a balance. And I need to still have my outlet in a selfish way, even when I have cancer and stage 4 cancer. I still need time out.
But then that's what's so amazing about the blog and your column and your book, is that you get to do stuff, other stuff outside of the home.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think for my kids, it's really nice for them to see that as well.
Yeah.
Because I think, otherwise there's a risk that if I'm having a bad day, they could actually just see me, well, mummy's asleep again on the sofa. So actually, my daughter was at a photo shoot with me over the weekend, loving it. I get them involved as much as I can, because I think it's good for them just to see the fun side of things as well.
Yeah. And also, you did a photo shoot in your underwear recently. Has that come out yet?
Yeah. So I work with a lovely photographer called Sophie Mayan. And she does a whole project about behind the scars, which I think is just amazing. So, I mean, there's a lot of body positivity and stuff at the moment. But what she does is get people who have scars from a variety of different things. She photographs them and then she tells their stories. And I've been working with her on the project for a while. And funny enough, for me, actually working with her has been like documenting my cancer journey. And it's been amazing because I've been, getting out my scars. We did a photo shoot at the weekend and my daughter came along, and again I was actually attached to the chemo pump, and we were doing some really cool shots where my daughter was basically using the my chemo pump as a microphone.
Amazing.
Which is cool. So they'll be coming out soon.
That will be so good. Is that with Sophie as well?
That was with Sophie as well. We were doing some filming for various news channels regarding it, just because I think it's an amazing project to support. And I do think it helps people because scarring, for example, or kind of mentally or physically, is something that people underestimate as a result of cancer. And it's not just cancer. I mean, I know it's lots of other illnesses. And actually the way she photographs people makes it really beautiful. Yeah. And so I've seen photographs of people who have 90% burns across their entire body and they look absolutely beautiful. So I think it's an inspiring project to be part of.
That's amazing.
And I've gone from a deputy head who's like, no way am I taking my kit off, to being like, woohoo.
It's great though. I mean, you must get a lot of feedback from whether it's mums or whether it's non-mums who are going through cancer, who are just feeling utterly inspired by what you're doing.
I get some really lovely, amazing comments, and people are so positive. But the thing that I find amazing is how everybody has their own way of working through their journey, if you want to say that. Some people want to be really vocal about it, and some people just want to hide underneath a cover. And I think either way is fine. But it's nice to know that there's, even in the dark depths of the trenches, it's nice to know that there's someone there with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It sounds awful, doesn't it? Like, if you're dying, if you've got someone with you, it's okay.
No, understandable. Okay, Deborah, I've got some quick fire questions for you.
I might know my answers.
That you'll be so surprised by these.
I think my answers are still going to be the same though.
Okay. So every now and again on Instagram, you do a chemo dance.
Yes.
Don't you? Which I love. What is your ultimate tune to dance to?
So I'm still going to say, Beyonce is my ultimate girl. I think she's brilliant.
She's amazing.
She is absolutely. And I was thinking, in terms of the tunage, I was actually looking at her Crazy Ladies one.
Single Ladies.
Single Ladies. And
Crazy Ladies.
I could do a new one. Crazy Hero Ladies. Or the Single Ladies. I want to get that hip movement going.
Is that the one where she does
She's
this?
doing the thing with her hands.
Or is that the ring? Put the ring on it.
If you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. Oh yeah, no.
Is that, those two different songs?
There's two, but either way,
so confused.
Either way, I'm up for anything with Beyonce.
We're gonna get irate Beyonce fans emailing in, complaining
Going,
we don't know our Beyonce.
I don't know which dance it is, but basically anything where Beyonce is wearing like some really kick-ass little costume, like shaking her booty. I just want to copy it.
Yeah,
I'm never going to look as cool as that, but I'm
you
gonna,
will, of course you will. You do. You're an amazing dancer. I've seen you. That Bollywood dance you did with your daughter on Instagram was amazing.
My daughter loves a bit of jiggling around. So
good. What's been your most embarrassing parenting moment?
So I was thinking about this actually. I talked about this before. So I think it's probably my daughter on a plane, vomiting, throwing up all over me, but to the point that other people on the plane had to give me their clothes, and I walked off the plane in a vest.
Is that because she'd thrown up on you so much?
She'd thrown up on me so much that the air stewardesses and stewards decided not to help me anymore. It was one of those really long flights where it wasn't supposed to be long, but it was an EasyJet flight. Delayed. Everyone was really annoyed. Everybody had given up because I was the mum in the corner with sick all over me. Ooh. And I walked out into Gatwick Airport in my knickers, a cardigan that a lovely lady had lent me just so I didn't show my arse to the whole world.
Did you give it back to her?
No, she was literally like, please, just keep it.
We don't want to see your sick covered pants.
No, and sick all over my hair.
Oh,
but to the point that I now, still now with a 10 and 8-year-old travel with like hundreds of changes of clothes for me. I just didn't learn my lesson. I now have learned my lesson in the bad way.
Amazing. So did she have like a really bad sick bug or something?
Yeah, I think she had norovirus on a plane for 6 hours. It was just bad.
Very bad.
It was very bad.
Who is your dream play date guest?
So I'm still going to say this in terms of
you realise that people listening didn't hear you saying it the last time because that podcast isn't going out.
So it is still the fact that I want it to be in Tamara Ecclestone's house. Yeah, because she has like a bowling alley, a softball play area, and I think it would be really cool. Yeah. But I'm definitely going to have. I would like Eloise to marry. One of the royals, maybe. So
Tamara's not invited.
Tamara's not. Well, she can come. She can
come and hang out.
She can come and hang out if she wants to. But and her kids. I don't need her kids, but I think we're going to have Meghan Markle there definitely. Yes. And we're going to have Prince George.
So basically, Meghan Markle's going to rock up with her nephew to be.
At Tamara.
This is quite a convoluted play date. Are we going to pull this one off, Deborah?
I think so. I think it's going to be brilliant. And the whole point is that maybe then Ellie is going to like charm Prince George.
There's quite an age gap there.
It's all right. She can go for younger.
What is there, about 6 years?
5-6 year age. It's nothing.
Oh, hang on. What is he, about 4? He's 4 now, isn't he?
Yes, we've only got a 4-year age gap. You know, Harry's going a bit older.
Yeah.
It's all the trend now.
Yeah.
Bit of a toy boy. We'll get in there early.
Right.
So you're
going to marry into the royal family.
But only to continue the Meghan Markle sparkle.
Yeah.
Of jazzing the whole thing up.
I love because so much.
If Ellie comes into the royal family, I mean, screwed.
Woo. I really love that you have really put a lot of thought into this to the point where you've gone from just organising a play date to marrying into the royal family.
I mean, I don't do things by half.
You've got to have plans.
Grand plans. High expectations.
Deborah, thank you for being my guest today, and thank you for being my guest last week, and thank you for nearly being my guest the week before. It has been utterly marvellous to talk to you. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for having me again and again.
Isn't Deborah amazing? I will put links to her Instagram and her blog over on the show notes so you can go and check her out. But thank you as always for listening, and please do go over to iTunes and subscribe and rate and review because it really massively helps other people discover the podcast. So thank you, and I'll catch up with you next time.